I'll just read off the preamble to our COVID meetings. So I'll remind all directors that in order to control background noise, please mute your computer or phone when you're not speaking. You can find the mute button on the bottom left hand of your screen. For directors joining us by telephone, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. When I call for a mover and seconder, you may indicate your wishes by saying your last name. After the item is moved and seconded, and I invite discussion on the topic, a director may indicate their desire to speak by saying their last name. I will then take a list of speakers and call upon those speakers in order. When I call for the vote, only those opposed need to weigh in. Otherwise, it'll be noted that you have voted in the affirmative. Votes in the negative will be recorded for the minutes. For directors on video Zoom, you're reminded that this meeting is being live web streamed on our website and available for the public to see. The Zoom meeting will then be available afterwards on YouTube. I will now call our meeting to order. And I will turn things over. Oh, I see I'm expected to give a summary on the...
Well, first, Mr. Chair, we do have one other item. So as has been our practice in the last couple of meetings, due to the global pandemic and the ongoing challenges associated with that in terms of public participation, I will ask staff to put a resolution on the screen and we can pass that motion so that we have got the utmost transparency for the viewing public. Just give it a second for Kristen to get that there.
There we go.
So this motion is for your consideration that until such time the FVRD has a safety plan in place and the FVRD offices reopen to the public, the Fraser Valley Regional District continue to conduct meetings without the members of the public present in the boardroom, and that the Fraser Valley Regional District continue to promote openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability by webcasting and archiving committee meetings online, allowing members of the public to write, email, or call in with questions, and promoting public participation at meetings through social media channels. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. So we're looking for a mover. Director Anger moves, second.
Raymond.
Director Raymond. Any discussion? Director Adamson. You're muted, Director Adamson.
How about now? Can you hear me?
There we go.
Okay. I guess we have to do this, but how long is it going to be? Does anybody, have any predictions?
Through the chair to Director Adamson, I wish that I had a crystal ball as to when this global pandemic would be over. However, I can assure you that I have directed staff to make some investments in some technology in the boardroom that will enable us to hopefully have some level of in-person participation in the boardroom for the September meetings. I don't anticipate that even with that technology that we will be able to accommodate 23 board members in that room, as well as members of staff and members of the public. So it would still be partially a Zoom environment for those meetings, but I am hopeful that with this technology, those members of the committees that wish to participate in person in the boardroom in September will be able to do so.
Good, thanks.
Good, thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. Thank you, Director Adamson. Obviously, this situation is evolving, and for instance, the state of California seems to have suddenly found themselves in a bit of a problem. So where we're going, it's very difficult to say at this time. So I'll turn things, well, at this time, I believe we have voted for and against. Were all those in favor on the motion as presented by our CAO? Contrary? Motion's carried. Which would take us to the summary of the Regional and Corporate Services meeting this morning, I believe. Is that right, Ms. Kinnaman?
Yes, yes,
Thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So this morning we had a lively meeting a lot of interest was shown in a report that was made by Mr. Urban regarding the Fraser Valley Regional District Outdoor Recreation Economic Impact Analysis. This report and analysis was funded by a federal gas tax grant and Tourism Abbotsford and Tourism Chilliwack. There was the study was quantifying the value of outdoor recreation activities within our regional district and offers strategic direction as to how we can move forward. There were 2,455 face-to-face surveys done. Evidently, this is the most in-depth survey ever taken place around outdoor recreation in British Columbia. And the report was very well received and created a number of comments from directors, with the consensus being that the study will be a very valuable resource for the Fraser Valley Regional District in championing our outdoor recreation assets. The meeting then moved on to reports on climate action, bike skills in our Island 22 Park, the clean economy, Globe 2020, and an agreement regarding the telecom tower on Sumas Mountain. All these items were well received and did not generate a lot of discussion. And that was pretty much the Regional Corporate Services meeting this morning. Are there any questions or comments from directors? Seeing that none, I will turn things back to our CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking for approval of the agenda, and late items.
For a mover.
Move Stobart.
Director Stobart moves. Second.
Raymond.
Director Raymond. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, contrary, motion carries.
Excuse me, Bill.
Oh, sorry, Director.
When did you just text me saying she's on the phone trying to speak but got muted? So she's doing a phone.
Yeah, staff can look after that for us. Thank
Absolutely.
you, Mr. Adamson. Okay, moving back to our CAO.
Thank you. Next item is 4.1. We have a presentation by Lisa Lacey of Lacey Developments Limited regarding Development Variance Permit 2020-08. Welcome,
Ms. Lacey.
Thank you for your time today. So I'm going to share my screen and just move over to the PowerPoint. So just one moment. Oh. Okay.
Bales?
Director
Hello?
Bales. Director Bales.
Yeah, I've been trying to pull up a screenshot just because I thought there might be a little bit of a visual on this one, but I haven't been able to find it. Going back to the upcoming meetings agenda and tried to go back and forth a couple times, but I'm not getting a screen.
Okay, excuse us, Ms. Lacey. So staff, Director Bales, as I understand it, is using a form.
Oh, I just got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, now it's there. I went back and forth a couple times because sometimes it does seem delayed, so now I have it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Director Bales. So we'll turn things back to Ms. Lacey then.
So thank you for your time today. I have a PowerPoint here on screen. I'll just kind of talk through it, but I appreciate your time in reviewing the Rempel family's development variance permit. So this is a picture of their existing residence on Loch Road in Lake Yurok. Our clients, the Rempels, propose to add a connecting breezeway or skywalk on the second floor between their two adjoining properties on Loch Road and Lake Yurok, allowing for a connection between 43836 and 43830 Loch Road. For the purposes of this presentation, I will refer to it as a skywalk. The proposed skywalk complies with current riparian restrictions and other geohazard covenant requirements. The construction will be planned so that the skywalk can be removed at a future date at the Rempel's cost without affecting the structural stability of either residence. Here's a closer look at the planned skywalk connecting on the second floor. A close-up of the proposed Skywalk plan showing the connection from the bedrooms to the gym and the sauna area. Owner Denise Rempel is in current treatment for lung and spinal cancer. This has just been found after 2 years of chemotherapy treatments that have severely weakened her. Denise's doctors have recommended that her physical therapy include the gym and sauna, and with 3 hip replacements and 5 hip surgeries, not climbing the stairs would be a welcome and medically suggested relief. The Skywalk is the only option to allow her to access the gym and sauna facilities without climbing stairs. After 50 years of hard work, having comfortable access to both of their residences without stairs would make a large difference in battling this current round of cancer. We can share details of Denise's medical records should that be necessary in another forum. By allowing the Skywalk, it also allows for greater emergency egress in case of an emergency and allow the Rempel's elderly parents to visit more often. It is our intention that the proposed Skywalk be constructed with the following in mind. A covenant be placed on both properties if requested, ensuring that if either property is sold independently or together, the proposed Skywalk be removed at no cost to the new homeowners. The proposed Skywalk will not compromise the structural integrity of either building, and the addition or removal would not impact the integrity of either building. Although we have included a proposed plan for the Skywalk with our desires in mind, we are open to changing final details of its final construction should this plan not meet approval. The construction underway at 43836 Loch Road meets all requirements of a single-family residence, including kitchen. The Skywalk has support of many neighboring properties in Lake Erock, including the 2 adjacent neighbors. These letters of support have all been sent to the FVRD. Here are some samples of existing breezeways and skywalks in British Columbia. Another example. This shows a similar construction to what is being proposed for this development variance permit. In conclusion, the Skywalk is an immediate health and safety need for Denise during her battle with cancer. It can be removed and remediated at the owner's expense in the future, and the owners are willing to covenant to do so. The Skywalk would represent an opportunity for Denise to seek out the physical therapy she is medically assigned by her physicians in an achievable manner. And that's the end of my presentation, so I'll stop share. Can I answer any questions, or I'm not sure in the next?
Yeah, that's right, Ms. Lacey. Thank you for your very nice presentation. At this time, we'll allow any directors to ask questions of you.
Davidson?
Director Davidson?
Yes, sorry, thank you. I'm having severe audio challenges of all sorts today. Let me try it this way. Can you still hear me?
We can hear you.
I just recall one from the staff report. One of the strategies put out there was to consolidate the 2 lots, and that would remove the need for any kind of development variance permit, covenants. Was there a reason why the owners didn't want to contemplate consolidating the 2 lots?
Hey, Ms. Lacey?
I believe it's the saleability of the properties in the future. This does still allow for 2 properties in the future to be owned independently. By consolidating, we would need to unconsolidate after. So the new residence at 43836 is planned. It has its own independent septic system and all requirements of a single family residence. Initially, we did talk about consolidating using the same septic, and we were under the impression that wasn't an opportunity, but they're open to all suggestions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lacey and Director Davidson. Any other questions?
Dixon.
Bales.
Okay, Director Dixon and then Director Bales.
Just a question. Is this the time to ask staff questions, or do you want me to wait?
Well, I thought maybe we'd let Ms. Lacey make her presentation, and then we'd ask our staff to give their version of this file and what we're facing.
Okay, thanks.
That's okay. Yeah, thank you, Director Dixon. Director Bales.
In the example of other properties that have causeways, were any of them 2 properties, or were they all 1 owner properties?
Ms. Lacey, did you want to answer that?
I can't speak specifically to the ownership and the photos that were presented, but typically they are of the same owners, just as it would be in this case. So Rempels are the on-title registered owners of both properties.
Good, thank you, Director Bales and Ms. Lacey. Any other questions? Hearing none, I could turn it over to Director Bales.
Well, I have questions for the staff that
Yeah,
might,
we will.
yeah.
We'll allow the staff maybe to give us a little presentation on this file and then open it up to questions from them also. So our CAO, would you like us to get a motion?
Sure. So the next one would be 4.1.1, which is Development Variance Permit 2020-08 to reduce the interior side lot line setbacks at 43830 and 43836 Loch Road in Electoral Area C. There is a motion for your consideration, and staff are available to answer questions at this time.
Okay, so we are looking for a motion.
So moved. Engar.
Move Director Engar, second.
Raymond.
Director Raymond. Any discussion?
Yes.
Davidson?
Director Raymond and then Director Davidson.
This would be a question to staff. As I'm reading through this, I can see some of the reasons why staff has made the recommendation, but I'm wondering if there is a variance because of medical reasons.
Okay, I suppose Mr. Danilus might want to address this. And Mr. Danilus, did you want to give just a general presentation on, from the planning side, the complexities around this file?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd very much like to help the property owners in this case. So we understand that there's a need for care of a family member, and very empathetic, I think, to that desire. We've identified some alternatives that might be helpful. Unfortunately, the challenge we have with this specific proposal is that we're talking about joining two separate dwelling units on separate but adjacent parcels. And under the BC Building Code, that kind of configuration requires a party wall between the two dwellings, and the party wall has to have a specific fire resistance rating of 1 hour, and it's got to provide a separation between the dwelling units that is continuous from the top of the footings of the building to the underside of the roof deck. The separation is, the code requires it to be a load-bearing structural wall and not a breezeway, a second floor breezeway. So as we see it, these building code requirements, they're fundamentally incompatible with the proposed method of adjoining these two separate residences. And unfortunately, the building code doesn't provide humanitarian exemptions or hardship type exemptions. In our view, there might be other alternatives from more complex to simple, but lifts, the installation of lifts to avoid stairways, for example, might be an option. Maybe an option to create a covered walk at grade that crosses the property line but is not affixed to either of the homes. I think the board could, the committee or board could approve that by way of a lot line setback variance. And I've identified a couple of other options in the staff report that the applicants could consider.
Good, thank you, Mr. Danilus. As I understand it, if the board were to decide that they would like to award this development variance permit, it would still require that the Rempels get a building permit, and that the awarding of that building permit outside of the BC Building Code would be very complicated or perhaps not possible. I just wonder if Mr. Danilus would like to speak to that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Our Chief Building Official, Ian Crane, reviewed this quite carefully, and we're certainly looking for opportunities and not simply looking for barriers. But we've ultimately, Mr. Crane determined that the construction that's proposed is simply incompatible with the building code And we don't see a way to issue a building permit for a second-story breezeway connecting two separate residences on separate parcels.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr.
Bales?
And thank you, Director Raymond. I believe Director Davidson was next in the queue, and then Director Bales.
My questions have been answered. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Bales.
Okay, through to staff, if it were rezoned to one property, would it make any difference in the building code structure of, and if it was rezoned to one property, how easy would it be to revert it back to two properties if the causeway was taken down?
Mr. Danilus, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair Dickey. Yes, it's a relatively simple matter to consolidate the two parcels, and that can be done fairly expediently. But I agree with the challenge that Ms. Lacey mentioned, in that in the future, if the owners were looking to re-subdivide, then that'd be quite a complex process, and they may have difficulty meeting current standards, given the servicing that's available in Lake Eric right now. But in any case, should the parcels be consolidated into a single parcel, that would address the building code concerns. We'd be left with an issue of having two dwelling units on one property, but we feel like we could work with the applicants either through a temporary use permit or some other means to allow that the two dwellings on one parcel for the duration that the care is required, or the property owners could look at rezoning to allow a duplex use on a single parcel. But those are things we could certainly consider, and we'd be very happy to work with the property owners if that's the direction they'd like to go.
Can I speak to staff again?
Yes, go ahead, Director Bales.
Oh, if this was referred back to staff to work with the property owners on a different plan, so we wouldn't be voting on it today, or we wouldn't vote on it today, how would that work for the applicant, I wonder? But or should we vote on this and then just have them come back with a different plan?
Okay, maybe we'll ask Director or Mr. Danilus to speak to that. Yes. The advantage to the applicants, I think, in not voting on the item today, but rather referring it back to staff to work with the applicants, is that if the applicant wished to revise their plan to do something like a covered walkway at grade that would cross the property line, there would still be a need for setback variances. And in that case, the applicants could simply revise their application and bring it back to the committee and the board without paying a further application fee. So I do think there's some advantage there if the applicant is of the mindset that they would like to significantly revise their proposal. Good, thank you, Mr. Danilus. Director Bales, did that?
Yeah, that answers my question. I'd like to refer this back to staff to get more information and to work with the homeowners.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion?
Second.
Second, Director Adamson. We typically don't have discussion around a referral, so that would take it to a vote. All those in favor?
No.
Contrary? Motion's carried. Thank you, Ms. Lacey.
Thank you. Thank you to the directors and to the staff and your commitment in working with our clients. And if you'll allow me, I just also wanted to say a big thank you to FVRD staff who've been excellent throughout this COVID-19 time and really reached out and been very proactive and helpful in our industry and our community. So thank you.
Good. Thanks again. We'll turn things back to Ms. Kinnaman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving to item 4.2, we have a presentation by Laura Jeffries, Applied Research Scientist from Silvis Environmental Services regarding FVRD Electoral Area Biosolids Management Plan.
Good. Welcome, Ms. Jeffries.
Hi there. Thank you for having me. I will share my screen here.
There, looks like we're seeing a PowerPoint now.
Perfect. All right, so yeah, thank you for the opportunity to discuss the FVRD Biosolids Management Option Assessment and the resulting recommendations. So in the next short 10 minutes, I'll provide some insight to the wastewater treatment plants currently managed by the FVRD and why the Biosolids Options Assessment was completed. And I'll briefly touch on how we assess the management options and then quickly go through the options that are available for management for each of the residual types, which are liquid sludge management, liquid biosolids, and dewatered biosolids. So to orient us to the facilities that are currently managed by the FVRD, we have 6. Under liquid sludge, we have North Bend, which is at the top of the map here. We have Minter Gardens, which is near Popcom, Baker Trails, which is on Chilliwack Lake Road, Aquadel at the south end of Cultus Lake, and the current Cultus Lake North facility. So during a preliminary sludge characterization, we identified that the material generated from these wastewater treatment plants is a liquid sludge, so it does not meet the organic matter recycling regulation or the OMAR. So it can't be directly used in a beneficial management program, but needs further treatment before use. Under liquid Class B biosolids, we determined that Morris Valley Wastewater Treatment Plant, located here near Harrison Mills, may produce a Class B liquid biosolids. So a liquid Class B biosolids would meet the OMAR quality criteria and therefore could potentially be used directly in a beneficial use program. Dewatered Class B biosolids. So currently the FVRD does not manage a facility that generates a dewatered Class B biosolids material, but there are plans for a future Cultus Lake North facility to replace the aging existing Cultus Lake North facility. So a dewatered product is managed a little bit differently than the other 2 liquid materials. It does meet OMAR quality criteria for Class B and can be used directly in a land application program. So with a potential future Cultus Lake North facility comes the generation of a new residual for the FVRD to manage with a suite of different management options to consider. So as well, a new Cultus Lake facility and subsequent phases of development may create some future considerations for liquid sludge and liquid biosolids management. So although management of each of the current facilities stands alone, it's a consideration as new developments become established and new wastewater treatment plants come online, that a management plan can be dynamic and may be adjusted as facilities managed by the FVRD evolve. So the scope of work assessed the current options for managing the 2 types of residuals currently produced, as well as the management options for dewatered Class B biosolids to be generated in the future. Just to note, this picture is of the ports to the underground tanks at Baker Trails. So to break down the options assessment process, for each of the 3 types of residuals, we use a set of assessment criteria that fall under 4 main categories to judge the best option for management for end use. For environmental considerations, we determine how beneficial the end use is, such as is it adding nutrients back to the land and offsetting fertilizer use. As well, we consider transportation emissions, as transportation is a big part of a management program. Social considerations include the likelihood of stakeholder acceptance. So we're looking for buy-in from the community, First Nations, local governments at the location that the residuals will be managed. We also consider technical factors, including the ease of regulatory compliance, which would include drafting a land application plan if necessary, and how easy the plan is to implement. Are there systems already in place, or do they need to be established from scratch? How reliable, and if the plan can continue year-round. We also, of course, consider economical factors, if there's any capital costs, and a high-level estimate for the management program. So that provides a little bit of a context to the type of evaluations we complete to determine the recommendations for a management option. So jump into the liquid sludge assessment. So again, we're considering that this material does not meet an organic matter recycling regulation quality criteria, so it can't be used directly. We've classified that all of the facilities that the FVRD currently manage, except for Morris Valley, fall under this category. And considering these 5 wastewater treatment plants, the annual volume to manage is about 103 cubic meters, which equates to about less than 1 dry ton. So it's a very small amount of material. So we also considered that in future, in a second phase of a new Cultus Lake facility, it may be designed with capacity to accept FVRD sludges into the headworks for treatment. This would save on some transport costs and disposal fees, but this option isn't currently available. So currently what happens is the liquid sludge, once it's reached storage capacity at the facility, is pumped with a vacuum tanker truck, and the sludge is moved to a larger wastewater treatment facility such as Annacis Island or James Plant in Abbotsford. So this really is our only option at this time until a new Cultus Lake facility may be able to provide an alternate solution. So the recommendation for liquid sludge management is to continue with the status quo with transporting liquid sludges to an alternate wastewater treatment plant for further treatment. So if we move on to liquid class B biosolids management, we identified that Morris Valley may meet the OMAR quality criteria, so could potentially be used directly in a beneficial management program. There are some major limitations, however, and that's one being the small volume of material that's generated annually. It comes to about 204 meters cubed, or about 1.5 dry tons. So we considered the liquid class B biosolids in a local land application program, which would use the liquid biosolids for a nutrient supplement to agricultural fields. However, regulatory compliance with development of a land application plan and such a small volume of material, it didn't make this a technical or economically feasible option. Again, another future consideration is that a new facility at Cultus Lake could be designed with, or sorry, has been designed with capability to dewater Class B biosolids. So this material could be transported directly to Cultus Lake for dewatering. So it would then combine Morris Valley into the dewatered biosolids management plan. Again, this is currently not an option. So it is recommended that the status quo for liquid class B biosolids is continued with, which is transporting these materials to an alternate wastewater treatment plant for further treatment, the same way that the liquid sludge is managed. The third material we looked at was dewatered class B biosolids, and which more management options exist. So the material would be managed in a beneficial program because it meets the OMAR quality criteria for Class B, as well as a dewatered product. So we're looking at a material that's greater than 18% solids. So though no facility under the FVRD management produces dewatered biosolids currently, the future Cultus Lake North has been designed to generate a Class B dewatered biosolids. It's been estimated that about 120 cubic meters or about 22 dry tons of material would be generated annually. And it's a little bit larger than the sludge and liquid biosolids generation, but in comparison to larger programs like the City of Chilliwack, it's still a very small volume to manage. So there are some limitations related to economies of scale. We did look at a range of different options, but I'll focus on 3, just giving a brief explanation of all of the 3. So third ranked was composting by a third party. And in this scenario, the containers collecting the biosolids at Cultus Lake would, once full, be transported to a third party composter. So it's very easy to implement, but the cost for hauling small volumes long distances, and the high tipping fees associated with acceptance by a composter does not make this the most economical option to pursue. We also considered an independent remote land application plan. There's a bit more effort for implementation, as a local transfer station would be required to make long distance transport efficient. But once transported to a land application site, you're capitalizing on an established program. This program would be fairly cost effective. However, the local transfer station requirement ultimately makes the final option of amalgamation with the Chilliwack program the most appropriate option. So the premise of the amalgamation with the City of Chilliwack Biosolids program is that the Cultus Lake dewatered biosolids would be transported to the City of Chilliwack facility, where they have a Quonset for biosolids storage. Once their Cultus Lake biosolids would be combined with a larger volume of the City of Chilliwack biosolids, and then once combined would be transported to an established agricultural land application site. So it's similar to the independent remote land application option, but with combining with the City of Chilliwack, this is an established transfer location. We did have conversations with the City of Chilliwack, and they expressed willingness to work with the FVRD to enable this management program. So it's easily implemented. It capitalizes on existing programs where stakeholder acceptance has been established, regulatory compliance is achieved, and the management costs remain fairly low. Ultimately, it's recommended that future dewatered biosolids get amalgamated with the City of Chilliwack program. We do suggest that the program is reevaluated as conditions change, such as agreements with Chilliwack or the material quality or production volumes change, or priorities of the FVRD change. But for now and into the foreseeable future, amalgamation with the City of Chilliwack is the recommended option. So just to wrap everything up, we've assessed the management options for 3 types of residuals produced or planned to be produced. Both the liquid sludge and liquid biosolids generated at the current facilities managed by the FVRD are recommended to continue with the status quo, which is transporting the materials for further treatment at an alternate wastewater treatment plant. For dewatered biosolids, forecasted to be produced by a future Cultus Lake North wastewater treatment plant, it is recommended to pursue amalgamation with the City of Chilliwack Biosolids Management Program. It's good to remember, though, that a residual management plan is dynamic, and it's recommended to reevaluate the program every 3 to 5 years to ensure the program is adapted to evolving FVRD management profile. So this last slide is a picture of a newly constructed Minter Gardens facility back in June 2019. When waste had just begun to be accepted. So a bit of an example of how the facilities have evolved over the last year. So I'll welcome questions at this time.
Good, thank you, Ms. Jeffries, for your nice cost benefit summary of our system. Are there directors with questions?
Director
Bales.
Sounds like Director Bales and then Director Raymond.
Then me, please.
And then Director Inger.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wondering, in your assessment, did you look into the type of units that change the septic into biofuel for heating, or there's some small units that are created even in Vancouver for smaller populations that would keep everything in-house on site, basically, and can be turned into fuel.
So we didn't look at this option specifically. We did look at an on-site containerized composting system to keep everything on site and within the FVRD. But a program like you're suggesting, as well as the containerized composting, has high capital expenditure, so funding would need to be procured to move forward with a plan like that.
Good, thank you, Director Bales. I believe Director Raymond was in the queue.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. How will this affect the North Bend site?
So we did assess the North Bend site, and in conversation with the FVRD, they said that there was no history of sludge removal over the 10 years of management, and that there's no forecasted removal necessary given the current depths of the sludge blanket. So we did consider North Bend, but generally management changes won't be needed.
Okay, thank you. One more, if I may.
Go ahead, Director Raymond.
You had mentioned the beneficial use program. Could you explain that a little better?
For sure. So we're treating our residuals in a beneficial way rather than treating them as waste. So there are many options to reuse biosolids that meet the OMAR Class B quality criteria for pathogens, trace elements, and vector attraction reduction. So some of the programs that we see are agricultural land application, where we're utilizing the material to put nutrients back into the soil, improve soil structure. There's also other plans that we looked at, such as quarry reclamation, where you're basically rebuilding a topsoil, but given the size of the or the volume of material that the FVRD would produce, it would need to piggyback on a different program to make that viable. But we're basically utilizing the characteristics of the material in a beneficial way.
Thank you. I do have some other questions, but if there's somebody else that is waiting, please go to them first.
Okay, well, thank you, Director Raymond. We'll let Director Angar speak.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I can't. My wife will get this phone. It's going to ring in the background. Quick question. Ever since I was a young guy in my 20s, I remember my stepdad, who was a soil scientist, taking me to one of his purification systems. It was a sewage system, and he showed me kind of these different vats and whatnot. And I didn't know what he was going to do, but we went to the end of the line, and there was a spigot. He poured himself a glass of water, and he proceeded to drink it. And I thought, he's out of his mind. So purification process is quite elaborate in what goes on. I'm just wondering, the solids, are they pure enough that through the different processes that the actual the solids that come out can be used for food production? Have we got to that stage so far, or is it just fallow fields and whatnot, forests, or where are these, for instance, Annacis Island, where are they putting all their sludge? Thank you.
Yeah, so it depends on the quality of the material that's generated. So there are different classes, such as Class A and Class B. The material that we're talking about for the FVRD is Class B. So there are some limitations on the use of the material in terms of a land application program. Things like a 60-day grazing limitation. So that means that you can apply the material to land, and as long as you've met that 60-day requirement, then cattle can come back on and you're using the land. There's also some restrictions for food crops, which is a little bit longer of a time frame, but generally they can be used on agricultural land following some time limit restrictions.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Angar. Any other questions?
Dixon.
Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering, so this is for Cultus Lake North. How often do you expect to have to take the biosolids away?
Yeah, so because it is a facility that has a lot of tourism, there's some seasonal fluctuation. We've estimated, though, that approximately 18 loads of a 10-ton bin would be moved to a transfer station like the city of Chilliwack, before then a larger 40-ton transfer to the application site. So it's 18 times is the forecast.
Like in a year?
In 1 year, yes. So we're estimating 120 to 180 cubic meters of material in a 10-ton bin, so maximum of about 18 a year.
Okay, thank you.
Good, thank you, Director Dixon. Who else might question? Director Raymond, did you want to ask some more questions?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of quick things, and that is, I know with COVID-19 right now, and with all the news that we're hearing about medicines and other things that are being flushed down toilets, how is that affecting these biosolids that you're speaking of? And does that come into consideration on where you're going to take this stuff to?
For sure. So we do rigorous testing for our facilities. There are considerations with where the facilities are and the types of influence that they're treating. So for example, a lot of the smaller facilities that exist in the FVRD are smaller and just treating residential homes. Whereas larger facilities like Metro Vancouver obviously have a lot more inputs into their systems. So there is testing to ensure that standards are adhered to. And it's constantly evolving with new contaminants of concern. And I have heard about some of the COVID-19 testing in the States for beneficial purposes, but it certainly is a consideration. But once it is identified to meet some of the quality criteria in the OMAR, then it's considered a safe product to use.
Okay, thank you. And one more, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
And that is when you are taking this stuff to a beneficial use program, there's a lot of controversy from different communities throughout the province for this to take place within their areas, some within their watersheds. How is that going to play out in the next few years?
Yeah, so there's definitely always some opposition to a land application program. We have an established application site in that's 15 kilometers north of Clinton. So the neighbors are minimal, and we do stakeholder engagement to ensure that the information is communicated and gives them a chance to express their concerns so we can address those appropriately. Also, with a biosolids program, there are buffer zones that are adhered to so that watersheds are protected, such as a 30-meter buffer from water, from drinking wells, things like that. So we do use the biosolids in as safe a manner as possible and follow all regulations.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. And
Director
the
Raymond?
aroma from it? The odor that is emanating from it?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The odor. I've been around a few of these when they've taken it out there and put it onto some fields, and there's quite a bit of an odor coming from it. And I'm wondering if these people that you've gone and spoken with beforehand about moving into these places are aware of what that can be like.
Yes, so odor is an ongoing concern, and it's definitely specific to each person experiencing that odor. In our current land application site, the biosolids are transported and used a fair distance away. It is a fairly remote site, but in any new land application program, the consultation does exist to discuss those concerns. The odor also is specific to specific generators. So you will find that some may be more pungent than others. And with our biosolids in a land application program, we do incorporate that into the soil so that once the material is applied and incorporated, the odor is really minimal for anyone on site after that.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Director Raymond.
Thank you. It's not that I don't believe you, but over the years that I've been with this board and in traveling around to different areas, I've heard too often that the odor is not going to be too bad. We can take care of it. It'll be fine. We can bury it. You won't see it anymore. But then that ends up lying on top of the soil for a fair amount of time before it's buried. And then there's rains, it rains on it. And, you know, I have a real issue around that sort of.
Yeah, so there are two kind of things to consider there, that biosolids do need to be stockpiled in a location prior to application. So those would potentially generate odors. There are restrictions that in the Fraser Valley, the stockpiles do need to be covered so that they should not be rained on to contain the organic matter. As well for applications, for example, and so this is practices for land application. On agricultural land, incorporation happens quite quickly. So there may be different experiences, but hopefully the majority can lend to a positive management.
Thank you for that. I don't like to say so, but you haven't convinced me yet. But thank you very much for the presentation and for your answers to my questions. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Raymond. Who else? Director Engar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question as well along that line. I noticed in one of the slides it showed one of those spreader trailers that we've seen for years in the Fraser Valley here, spreading around I've always assumed it was hog manure or animal manure from the farms. So am I understanding correctly that it could also be very well composted and considered safe human waste that is being spread by one of those manure spreaders?
I would say there is a possibility, but the nutrient levels in the Fraser Valley specifically are largely sufficient considering the animal manures available for use for crop nutrient demands. So I do know there are some programs in the Fraser Valley, but I would say the majority are animal manure spreaders that you would see.
So just a quick follow-up then, is it likely that some of the, I can't remember your designations that you use, but the highest quality human manure, if we can put it that way, is it likely that that could be being used on vegetable crops here in the Fraser Valley?
There are fewer restrictions with the Class A biosolids material, so they can be used on human food.
Very interesting. I thought they only did that in China, but I guess we've joined the group. That's interesting. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Director Engar.
Dixon.
Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick one through you too, Ms. Jeffries. So for the Cultus Lake system, are you confident that Chilliwack will, that there will be a partnership with Chilliwack?
Yeah, so we've had multiple discussions with the city of Chilliwack, and they're very open to working with the FVRD. They alluded to the fact that any costs associated would be limited to kind of just receiving that material, and there's no profit. It's going to be a partnership, and they would just like to see a memorandum of understanding outlining the terms. Obviously, they are accepting a material that is not their own, so ensuring that a sampling program for the FVRD is sufficient and confirms the Class B biosolids quality that the city of Chilliwack also produces. So from all of our conversations, I'm fairly confident that they would be on board.
Good.
Bales?
Thank you, Director Dixon. Director Bales.
Yeah, I'll follow up a little bit. A couple questions. The individual tanker trucks that pump out individual homes, is there a different set of rules for them? Because I remember seeing on the news how on farms they were seeing all kinds of things like condoms and well, whatever. I don't want to even talk about it, but just lots of material that wasn't composted onto farmland that's used to grow vegetables. So I'm just wondering about the different rules, and also I'd really like to see a 20-year analysis for something that a different kind of system that creates biofuel and or heating like they have in Victoria and a few other places in Vancouver, Victoria. Different options would be nice to get the long-term cost analysis. Obviously, it would cost a lot up front. But if you could speak to those two things.
So there are certainly different rules and regulations for individual septic tanks. It's septage material and would not have the same testing that a beneficial program uses to qualify the material for that use. So yes, it can't be used directly in a land application program and would need further treatment before use. It certainly would be interesting for the 20-year or long-term assessment for biofuel options. So that's something to potentially for the FVRD to look into, but not something that we will do at this time.
One more quick follow-up on one of Terry's comments about the COVID in Italy, and I think one other country, they were finding it well before the Chinese outbreak in some of their septic samples when they went back and checked. I'm just wondering, is there any contemplation in our region to do something like that, and an analysis of previous septic samples?
So COVID-19 shouldn't make it through the secondary treatments of wastewater treatment plants. So it shouldn't be a concern.
It's not a concern that way. It's just more of a question of whether we had it well before we thought we had it. So checking up on old samples, are those even available?
No, the old samples wouldn't be available for retesting.
Okay.
Good, thank you, Director Bales. Any other questions? Seeing none, I would like to thank Ms. Jeffries for a very nice presentation and bringing us up to speed on the sustainability of our septic sewer systems. And we do have a motion before us. Is there a mover? Looking for someone to move.
So moved, Engar.
Move Director Engar, second.
Davidson?
Second, Director Davidson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Thanks again, Ms. Jeffries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yes, we'll move down to item 5.1. We have the draft Electoral Area Services Committee meeting minutes of June 9th, 2020.
Okay, looking for a motion. Is there a mover?
So move, Raymond.
Move Director Raymond. Second.
Stobart.
Thanks, Director Stobart. Any issues with the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Next is 6.1. We have the Agricultural Land Commission application of a non-farm use at Bridal Falls Road, Electoral Area D.
For motion. Move Director Raymond. Second, Director Engar. Any discussion? Director Engar, did you have something to say?
No, I'm sorry, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd just like to say that our residents get a lot of free entertainment from the paraglider pilots flying above us in Bridal Falls, so I'd like to see this file move forward. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Next item is 6.2. We have development variance permit 2020-03 to vary the height regulation in the waterfront residential zone at 29 Lakeshore Drive, Cultus Lake in Electoral Area H.
Move Dixon.
Move Director Dixon, second Director Engar. Any discussion?
Dixon.
Director Dixon, please.
Just a quick comment that this has gone through the Cultus Lake Park Board and they've seen it and seem to be happy with moving it forward. So I will support that as well.
Thank you, Director Dixon. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion carries.
Next item is 6.3. We have development variance permit 2020-07 to reduce the front and side lot line setbacks at 58261 Fancher Road in Electoral Area B.
For a motion,
Move Adamson.
move Director Adamson, second.
Second, Raymond.
Thank you, Director Raymond, second. Any discussion?
Just that the neighbors supported it and nobody complained, so I'm in favor of it.
Good, thank you, Director Adamson. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor? Contrary, motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is 6.4. We have the Rogers Communications Tower proposal for 52018 Yale Road in Electoral Area D. There's a motion for your consideration.
Okay, look for a motion.
Move Stobart.
Move Director Stobart, second.
Dixon.
Director Dixon, thank you. Any discussion?
I'd have a
Davidson?
please.
Bales.
Okay, we'll start with Director Engar, then Davidson and Bales.
I'm just wondering how, if the public has got back on this. I quickly glanced through that one, but I didn't see any response from public at this point.
Thank you, Director Engar. Mr. Danilus, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair Dickey. The public response is typically directly to the proponent and through them to Industry Canada. Now, it's not uncommon for residents to also include us in the correspondence. We haven't received anything like that, and we may not. But the mail out was sent by the proponents to properties, 91 properties, within a radius of about 150 meters of the tower site. There will also be an ad placed in the Chilliwack Progress that invites public comment on it. Nothing made its way to us so far, and haven't heard any kind of rumblings or anything from the community.
Good, thank you, Mr. Danilus. Director Engar, does that satisfy your questions?
Yeah, I think that's, I appreciate that feedback. I'm just hearing more and more concern over 5G coming, and I'm wondering if people may have an avenue to express that rather than us sort of being left out of the loop. So I know that's not currently on this single mast proposal, but something I think we should be aware of. We may be seeing more and more concern coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Engar. Director Davidson.
Thank you, Chair. Just unmuting myself here. One thing I noticed on the report, this is a question through to staff. When it says that 91 properties would be notified, if I look at the map, 150 meters from the tower location is a different notification than 150 meters from the parcel boundaries that contain the tower. And there's 150 meters from the tower location per the consultant report wouldn't be touching any of the properties to the north. So I just want to make sure that we are indeed catching those properties to the north because the consultant's report to me suggests otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Davidson. Mr. Danilus? Mr. Danilus, are we communicating?
Yes, sorry, Chair Dickey.
No, that's fine.
Staff will work with the proponent here to make sure that the 91 properties that we think are being targeted with the mail out will actually receive them.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Danilus. I would just interject and say that our community over many, many years has only voiced complaints about the poor cell reception and how we need to get a tower up to improve on that. That doesn't mean that we won't hear some criticism from this file, but that's the history as I know it. Thank you again, Director Davidson. Unless you have something to follow up, I'll turn it over to Director Bales.
I'm good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Bales?
Yeah, just wondering if we should, for certain applications like this, studies have shown that 500 meters can be a higher risk for things like cancer in around cell towers. And I know that was a concern when there was an application down in Dewatered, and I've since heard just recently that a lot of people in the trailer parks have cancer. And I have to wonder if there is any issue with the cell tower having to do with that. So yeah, if there is any way to put it in the record that we should notify people in 500-meter range, that would be good. And I know that the Safety Code 6 is really outdated as far as not updated for today's standards and the amount of cell tower radiation and Wi-Fi and the whole works basically. It's a really old, archaic standard, and it really needs to be updated for health standards.
Good. Thank you, Director Bales. And I'd just say that my understanding is that the senior levels of government have taken local governments very much out of the process in the approval of these towers. We do get a referral, we can make comments, but the ultimate decision is made by senior governments. Director or Mr. Danilus, you might want to correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. You're correct. Industry Canada is the authority with jurisdiction, and Industry Canada would be the agency that approves or doesn't approve cell towers. Our role is to provide feedback to the proponent on the adequacy of their consultation plan, and the regional district is the applicant is required to submit feedback from the regional district expressing that we either think the consultation is adequate or it isn't. And if the desire of the committee is to look at a larger mail-out radius, we can certainly put that forward as the committee and board's feedback to the proponent.
Good. Thank you for that description, Mr. Danilus. Certainly, as I say, our community has been very supportive of getting better cell coverage in the community, and I'll be interested in see what kind of response we get from the mail out as it's been organized so far. But I think that's what's needed at this time. Any other comments or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Contrary, the motion's carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving to item 6.5, we have the Commercial Gravel Operation Permit 2020-01 for Statlu Resources, 12 kilometers Chehalis Forest Service Road in Electoral Area C. And there is a motion for your consideration.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. So we're looking for a motion.
I'll move to get on the floor for conversation.
Thank you, Director Raymond. Our seconder.
Dixon.
Thank you, Director Dixon, seconds. Discussion. Director Bales. Go ahead.
I'd like to do an amendment to the motion, or not, refer it back to staff, and I can read it out. It was sent off earlier.
Okay.
Director Bales did provide it to staff so that we could put it up on the screen if that's helpful.
Yep, that would be helpful. Oops. I'm still
Okay,
trying
so-
to pull it up. Sorry, my screen is not showing.
Okay, so
Okay.
for
There
There's
is
a time lag.
there is a
There's
40-second
time lag.
delay.
So,
okay.
yeah. So I'm just trying to pull it up somewhere else. Okay. I could read it off my phone. Should I
Go
go
ahead,
now?
Director Bales. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, until and after such a time that the permit applicant, Statlu Resources, Inc. complies with the communication plan that addresses how the permit holder will communicate with the surrounding community as referred to on page 4 of the bylaw 1181 permit application, as indicated in the applicant's noise and water control. There are issues of residential concern, but the applicant has not communicated with area communities on this current application. Also of concern that terminology for mitigating impacts in the study use the term should instead of shall. This gives the applicant the option to not follow the recommendations. And the notice of motion was to refer back to staff the motion 6.5 that's on the July 14th EASC agenda.
Good, thank you, Director Bales. And we do have a seconder already in place, staff?
We would require a seconder for this.
Okay,
Director
thank you.
Bales.
Second it.
Director Adamson seconds.
Yeah.
So this is a referral back. So typically we do not discuss the referral, as I understand it.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
This goes to a vote. So unless there's a discussion around the referral, this would go straight to a board or a committee vote.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. And I believe if we just consult with our corporate officer, any discussion would be with respect to time and place. Is that correct, Ms. Riley?
Yes, that's correct. So the debate on the motion to refer has to be confined to the referral itself. And you can make a change to, with respect to when it be brought back, but it should be confined to the debate on the merits of the referral back to staff.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Riley. So we do have a date to be referred back to staff to a future meeting, or is that included in the motion?
No, I was actually hoping that it would be referred to staff until they can get more work done with Statlu, the applicant.
Good. Thank you,
and
Director.
I wasn't sure how long that would take, so I didn't put a timeline on it.
Okay, thank you, Director Bales. So through to staff, is that in line with our procedures?
Perhaps Mr. Daniluz wants to comment since he's been managing this file.
If I may, Mr. Chair, Director Raymond.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Raymond.
I just wanted to jump in here for a minute because this has been referred or is going to be voted on to be referred. So discussion should not be held on it. And as for a time limit, the report back would be at our next EASC meeting to have the report back on it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you for pointing that out, Director Raymond. Staff are not in disagreement with that?
We're not in disagreement, Mr. Chair.
Good. Thank you. So on the motion to refer back to staff, pardon me?
I'm sorry, I just wanted to get a question in. This is Director Davidson. Just verifying that we should not be speaking to the reasons as to why a referral is appropriate, only voting on that matter. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, I think we have the motion in front of us that Director Bales has put forward. On the motion, all those in favor? Contrary? Motion is carried.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just want to confirm that there was nobody in opposition to that.
Okay, was anyone in opposition to that motion?
Stobart.
Director Stobart in opposition. Any others?
Dixon.
Director Dixon is in opposition.
So I just have Director Stobart and Director Dixon. Is that correct?
Appears to be correct. Yeah. Good. Thank you. The motion's carried.
Mr. Chair, we're moving down to item 9, which is reports by electoral area directors.
Okay, we'll start with Director Engar.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to say that my garlic is waterlogged and the soggy potatoes, and yet the lettuce is doing brilliantly. So we've had an awful lot of water. I don't have anything to report from my community other than lots of interaction in different ways that are not really applicable to the entire community. So I'll say I'll be happily going back out to the garden and doing what I can to preserve things as well as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Enger. Something always works out. Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an update on our goose management. It's called Goose Be Gone. So we've done another count and the numbers are down a little bit this year. So we're pleased about that. Plus, we've had some signs put up on garbage cans, just please don't feed the geese, as well as flyers being handed out. So it seems to be making a little bit of a difference anyway. It's pretty busy up at the lake in spite of the weather, so there's still lots of people coming up here and moving along. And thanks to the park staff, we've got a little bit of a lakeside trail added on. So that's David Urban and his team. And so the lakeside trail has had a little bit of work done up this year. So thanks for that. That's about it.
That's all good news. Thank you, Director Dixon. Director Adamson.
Well, it's been quiet since we not really have meetings here in town anymore. Sunshine Valley's doing okay. Ryan has opened the museum for only 8 people at a time can go in, but he's still getting a tremendous amount of people coming. I think that's all for now. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, Director Adamson. Director Stobart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of things. One, I just want to thank staff for their diligence over the past while as we watched the water levels get close to a troublesome point and then recede. Second item, Norm Harris, at 101 years old, Lake Yurok resident, passed away about 10 days ago. Norm was one of the founding members of our North Fraser Volunteer Fire Department a long time ago. I guess that's getting closer to 45 or 50 years now. And I believe he assumed the rank of deputy chief at one time. But anyhow, I just wanted to pass that along. So.
Good. Thank you, Director Stobart. Director Raymond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to report out that finally I was able to make the announcement to the community for the grant for the CN station. We did meet down at the station, had some of the local papers there as well. Pretty exciting times, and I'll be meeting this afternoon with staff to carry on and see what our next steps are. Thank you.
Good. Congratulations, Director Raymond. That's a big project. Director Davidson.
All quiet here, Chair, again. So pretty much it. Thank you.
Quiet is good. Thank you, Director Davidson. Director Bales. Director Bales.
Sorry, I was still muted. Anyway, pretty quiet, but I did get inquiry from the Dewatered Elementary School representatives that are very interested in being involved in the community garden if it goes forward, assuming it goes forward. So it's turning into quite a collaboration with the Dewatered Farmers Market and the ACES group and the Dewatered School interest, and I helped a little bit with an outline of a design, and then it got turned over to a representative from the Dewatered Farmers Market, and she's working on it as well. And so it'll be a true collaboration of the community, hopefully. Other than that, my lettuce is doing great. I had the best spinach in my whole life, but the warm crops are kind of slow. Anyway, that's about it.
Good. Thank you, Director Bales. And for myself, I have nothing to report from my community. So I'll turn things back to Ms. Kinnaman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So now we move to item 10 on the agenda, which is public question period for items relevant to the agenda. And as you know, and that has been past practice, we have made this period of time available to the public where they can call in at 604-702-5000. We also made opportunities available via our website and social media channels in advance of the meeting. However, today we have actually expanded our opportunities for public participation at both of our Regional and Corporate Services Committee meeting, as well as our Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. So today, members of the public were able to join us via Zoom. As I understand it, we have had a couple of members of the public who have been watching via a waiting room, and I'm going to just turn this over to our corporate officer, Jamie Riley, and she will one by one bring these members of the public into the meeting with an opportunity to ask questions relevant to the agenda. Ms. Riley.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. So as Ms. Kinnaman mentioned, we have opened up our committee Zoom meeting to members of the public participating electronically, and I've been advised by our admin team that we have 2 members that are joining us via Zoom. I will note that for members that are members of the public that are joining us today, please note that we'll be bringing you in one at a time. Now, I've been advised that we do have 2 members that are participating, and each member will be given an opportunity to ask a question of the committee. And I will note that for members of the public that are waiting, that until you are admitted into the meeting, you will be muted and the committee will not be able to hear you. I will note for our directors that for the members of public that we do bring into the meeting, you will not be able to see them, but you, the members of the public, will be able to see and hear you. So I would ask our admin team to admit the first member of the public. I understand we have a Pedro Peterson waiting to ask a question.
Welcome, Mr. Peterson.
There we go, and we're just going to unmute Pedro, and Pedro, I'll just get you to just repeat your name and your address for the record, and you can ask the committee your question.
Correct. My name is Pedro Ayla Pedersen. I actually a board member of the West Soren Club, and I was just participating to see what how the events will proceed regarding the change of the petition we had for the LC, the landing zone at Bridals. I don't actually have any questions. I just came here to answer any question if there was one. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Peterson. So the application is with the Agricultural Land Commission asking for dispensation for the paragliding landing area to be utilized for the next lease agreement, as I understand it. And so now the committee has voted in favor of it going forward to the Land Commission. I might ask Mr. Danilus to expand on that if there's something I've missed.
Thank you, Chair Dickey. Very little to add, only that after the, presuming that the decision of the board is consistent with the recommendation of the committee, we'll be very quickly sending it off to the Land Reserve Commission, and then the application will sit with the Land Reserve Commission for a decision.
So Mr. Peterson, did you have anything else to add to your comments today?
No, that's all. I was just here in case that there were any questions from your part. Thank you very much for all the work done on this. Really appreciate it. The club is really happy with how things are going in the community.
Good. Thank you for taking part today, Mr. Peterson.
You're welcome.
Back to Ms. Riley.
Thank you, Chair. So next we have our last participant is Tracy, and so we'll just admit her into the meeting. and Tracy will be unmuting you, and I'll just have you just state your name and your address for the record, and you can ask your question of the committee.
Well, I don't think she's unmuted, Chair.
Just takes a minute. It just takes a minute for the function to work.
So Tracy, if you can hear me, you can unmute yourself by pressing the mute button in the bottom left-hand corner. Maybe if our team can assist with that. Okay, we seem to be having a little bit of technological difficulty here. So what I would suggest is we don't have any other participants waiting in our Zoom meeting. However, we have an additional opportunity for the public to ask a question, and that would be anytime. You can call in 604-702-5000. And Tracy, if you're hearing me right now and you're unable to unmute yourself, please do call in and we will relay that question to the board or to the committee.
And so, as has been past practice, if the committee wants to take about 3 minutes here, and we will just give the public an opportunity. As you know, the webcast does have about a 30 or 40-second delay, so we like to give plenty of time for members of the public to hear our message that they can call in at this time, as well as dial their phone. So we'll just take about a 3-minute pause here, and hopefully we can get Tracy back on the line here.
Good, thank you, Ms. Kinnaman.
So we haven't been able to connect with Tracy, but if Tracy is still listening, please feel free to reach out to us and we will connect that question with the board at our July 28th board meeting.
So with that, Mr. Chair, we can proceed down to the next item if members of the committee have returned. Just want to make sure that we have everyone present. We'll be looking for a resolution to close the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. Looking for a motion.
So moved, Freeman.
Move Director Raymond, second Director Dixon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Contrary? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we'll just